The last photo. Julia was a typical high school junior, living in a small town where not much ever happened, but she had a passion that set her apart: photography. She loved capturing moments, freezing them in time to tell stories no words could fully convey. On weekends, she'd spend hours wandering around town with her camera, snapping shots of everything from abandoned buildings to old street signs. One Saturday, while exploring a neighborhood yard sale, she spotted something unusual on a table cluttered with old clocks and rusted tools. It was a Polaroid camera, old, bulky, with scuff marks on its black body. There was something charming about it, something nostalgic. The seller, a frail, older woman with a worn look in her eyes, saw Julia's curiosity. "Interested in the camera?" the woman asked, her voice raspy. "Yeah, how much?" Julia replied, lifting it up and testing its weight. It was heavier than she expected. The woman hesitated, her eyes shifting. "Take it for $10, she said, almost as if she was glad to be rid of it. Julia didn't ask why. She was just thrilled with the find. The next day, Julia was itching to test her new camera. She loaded in some old film she had lying around, unsure if it would even work with the Polaroid, but worth a shot. She headed to a nearby park just before sunset, aiming to catch the golden light filtering through the trees. She clicked the shutter and waited, listening to the low words the Polaroid spit out the photo. As she waited for it to develop, something odd happened. When the image finally came into view, it showed not just a park scene she'd framed but also the figures standing in the distance, a young couple who looked like they were arguing. She didn't remember seeing them there. Confused, she stuffed the photo in her bag and went home. The next morning, while scrolling through her social media feed, she saw a local news report. A young couple had been involved in a heated argument at the park last night. It ended with the police being called after things turned violent. Julia froze. She thought back to the photo. Was it a coincidence? Over the next week, Julia couldn't stop thinking about the camera. She decided to test it again. This time, she went downtown, aiming at the empty alley behind a row of shops. She pressed the shutter, waited, and when the picture developed, her blood went cold. In the image, a familiar scene had developed. The alley was just as empty and unremarkable as she'd expected, except for one detail. Near a dumpster, she could see a lone figure, slumped over, face hidden in shadow. The following morning, another news report flashed on her phone. Someone had been found unconscious in that same alley, left there after an apparent mugging.
The eerie feeling was growing stronger. Julia was no longer fascinated, she was terrified. The camera wasn't capturing reality as it was. It was capturing something predictive. It was showing her moments of disaster that hadn't happened yet. Over the next few days, she tested the camera repeatedly, each time hoping her suspicions were wrong. But each photo captured something that would later come to pass. A car wreck at a busy intersection, a child lost in a crowded mall, a house fire. Every time, the disasters were small enough to hit local news but significant enough to make her heart pound every time she looked at the images. Her hands shook every time she loaded new film, wondering if this was a power or a curse. But the final photo was different. One evening, as the sun set, she decided to take one last picture. She pointed the Polaroid at her own bedroom mirror and took a shot. The whir of the camera felt louder than ever, the click echoing in her ears. She watched the image develop, pulse racing, palms sweating. When the image finally came into focus, Julia's breath caught. In the photo, there was her reflection, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a figure in dark clothing, face obscured by shadow, holding something sharp in their hand. The blade glinted in the reflection, pointed at her. Julia's heart pounded as she looked around, half expecting to see someone in her room. But there was no one, just her and the camera. Then, her phone rang. The sudden noise made her jump, almost dropping the photo. She looked down at the caller ID. It was her best friend, Leo. She answered, her voice shaky. "Hey, Jules. Are you okay?" Leo's voice was concerned. "I had the strangest feeling that something was wrong." Julia tried to brush it off, but her voice betrayed her. I'm okay. It's just something's been happening, and I don't know how to explain it." She glanced at the photo again, her hands trembling. "Want me to come over?" Leo asked. He knew her well enough to know when something was really wrong. "Yes," she whispered, barely able to get the words out. "Please." While waiting, she couldn't stop staring at the photo. What did it mean? Was it a warning? A prediction? She felt like the walls were closing in, and every shadow seemed like it was hiding someone. A soft knock on her door broke her trance. She opened it, letting Leo in. She showed him the photo, explaining everything that had happened with the camera. Leo looked at the image, then at her. Julia, this isn't just some spooky camera. It's linked to you somehow, showing you things you're meant to see. But I don't think it's random. Someone or something wants you to know these things. They agreed to destroy the camera, to end whatever this strange power was. Together, they went to the back of her yard, dug a small pit, and smashed the camera to pieces with a hammer. As they buried the fragments, Julia felt a strange relief, as if a weight had lifted.
But as they finished, Leo looked down, pulling something from the dirt. It was a photo one she hadn't seen before. It was a picture of the two of them, standing over the buried camera, both of them looking haunted, shadows stretching from behind. And in the background, just barely visible, was that same dark figure, watching. From that day on, Julia didn't dare pick up another camera. But sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she'd still see that last image, the shadow stretching long and the figure waiting just out of sight, forever watching.